Welcome to the greatest show, episode 140. We have Tricia and myself, DJ, and we are joined by Dan from Fear the Boot.
Hey, it's great to be here.
And while I was at work today, I thought it was funny to combine our names in my head, so I came up with two new shows that we could do. We could do Fear the Show or The Greatest Boot.
Well, or we could actually do it simpler than that. We can just do DJ and DJ, because my middle name is Joseph.
Oh, gosh.
Or we could like become a music act, DJ.
The DJs, DJ.
Yeah, the DJs, yeah, precisely. Now, I think I would actually do better as an MC than a DJ, but we could do like DJ and MC DJ or MC DJ and DJ.
Oh, he already has a rap name.
I do. I came up with my rap name. I'm a robust gentleman, so I am Whole Milk.
Whole Milk, okay.
I am a whole posse, you know, vitamin D, 2% chocolate.
I don't think, I love listening to rap music. We actually did a whole show on where Chad and I did a love letter to hip hop. But I totally understand, though, that if I was to ever attempt rap, it would come out about as well as those Juggalo freestyles you can catch on YouTube. So I've not bothered coming up with a rap name.
I don't rap, but I just thought it was hilarious that I came up with a rap name because some of the people I used to work back in North Dakota, they would often associate me with rap and come up with their own names, like you should be this or you should be that, and I'm like, no, I'm Whole Milk because I'm large and white.
Well, and whole milk tastes the best too. It's not the best for you.
That's true. We don't drink cow's milk at all anymore.
Okay.
But we're not crazy vegans or anything. We just almond and cashew milk just tastes so much better.
Cashew is pretty much.
I mean, I'm not really struggling with weight per se, but just for the sake of my cholesterol levels and just long-term health, I switched from whole milk to 2%, but it still comes straight from the good old moo moo.
My dad kind of grew up on a dairy farm, so he's all about the whole milk.
Well,
and we're all about the cashew milk, so you can see why we moved.
I also have this deep-seated psychological issue, and I know it's irrational, but I believe that once you open the milk, it's only good for that day.
Yeah, that got really old.
And I would after that point, if it was the next day, I'd start smelling it. Like, is it still good? We just opened it, all right? It's still good.
Yeah. So unless you store your milk like behind the radiator, it should still be fine.
And it was.
It was.
But at one point in time, he got really, really allergic to all dairy products.
It was bad.
Oh.
And it was years ago where it wasn't fashionable. It was more of a, medically necessary thing. So it was very difficult to find alternatives, especially in North Dakota. And so
it came on out of the blue, it hit hard, and it went away just as randomly.
Yeah. So we switched to like soy milk, and we would end up buying the dairy alternatives for him, and it was so expensive that I'd always end up with the cheap regular stuff. So it's like if we wanted to make pizza at home, I would end up with a 99-cent party pizza, and he would end up with, a dairy-free alternative everything that cost a fortune.
I think you got the better end of the deal, though, because quite frankly, I would take a Totino's pizza over a lot of those high-end ones any day of the week.
My guilty pizza pleasure is Tombstone pepperoni.
Yeah, frozen Tombstone pizza.
Yeah.
And yet it doesn't exist out here. We haven't found it in a grocery store or
Really?
Yeah, we haven't found it anywhere. The only way that we've been able to get Tombstone pizza since living out here is by ordering through that 2-hour Amazon Prime Now delivery. They seem to have Tombstone pizza, and that's it. So there's an Amazon warehouse somewhere stuffed full of Tombstone pizzas.
I've never ordered anything off of their perishables menu. So do they send it and just leave it insulated? Does it get shipped with dry ice? How does it show up?
No. So basically, if you do order anything that is perishable, Well, first of all, I should say we went to one car after we moved out here, and so he usually has the car, which means I'm at home, and so I do a lot of grocery ordering online. Get a lot of stuff delivered to me. But if I were to order, like I've ordered lettuce and bananas and fruits and vegetables and things, and where we live, we can either get products that Amazon stores or we can get things from a grocery chain called New Seasons, which I believe is local to out here. And so basically, if you do order perishable or frozen items, they do indicate that you have to be home to accept the order. They can't just leave it on your doorstep. So if I were to get a bunch of canned goods and stuff, they could just leave it in front of my door. Basically, everything comes in paper bags, and if it's the case of something that's frozen or refrigerated, it's kind of packed in a, I don't know, like a disposable sort of bubble wrap cooler of some type, and there's ice packs inside. And the pizzas are never still frozen. But we do live on the opposite end of Portland from where the warehouse is. So, but usually things get here whenever you order. There's a 2-hour delivery window. So it's usually here within 3 or 4 hours of me placing an order.
Okay, they've made that no fun at all. Every so often, my wife her mom's side of the family is from Venezuela. Her dad's American, but her mom's side of the family is Venezuelan. And so every so often she places orders for Venezuelan food, some of which is quite perishable, various cheeses and fruits and things like that. And the place that she gets it from usually ships it with a block of dry ice.
Oh, yeah,
that's like the toy in a cereal box.
Yes, it is.
So you get the food and you get a toy to play with, and you get to, put it in the sink and fog out your kitchen and just have all kinds of fun with it. So no, if they just ship it cold and make you be there to get it, that's no fun at all.
Yeah.
That'd be like getting to the bottom of a Cracker Jack box and it's just a message that says the box is the toy.
Well, have you noticed, maybe you haven't had Cracker Jacks in so long, I stopped eating them because of how disappointing the toy was, that you used to get sometimes you get a plastic little thing or a spinning device or something, but now it's like a cardboard piece of crap.
I'm guessing because probably there's that one person that tried to eat it and it went horribly awry. And
like Kinder Eggs.
Kinder Eggs.
Do you know what Kinder Eggs are?
No.
So they're basically banned in the United States.
They are.
We have a friend from England who would come back and visit every once in a while, and he always brings everybody gifts. And I sometimes wonder how he gets these things on a plane and across the country like that, or across the world. Kinder Eggs it's a chocolate shell. And there's basically a toy inside. It's wrapped in tinfoil, sort of like a Cadbury egg. And then inside of the chocolate shell, there is a, what would you call those little plastic containers? Like you would get out of a gumball machine.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to remember what I opened the last time I had one.
So chocolate shell, yellow plastic thing inside, and then inside of the plastic thing is your toy. And apparently they had to be banned in the United States because too many people were
American children are too stupid.
Well, or it could be because American children actually have enough teeth to bite into that. So
yeah, so he had brought Kinder Eggs over one time, and I'm like, these are banned here, right?
No, I think that the most dangerous food like that, the food that I have only been handed a few times and have generally been terrified to eat, is king cake or king bread or whatever they call it.
Okay, yeah, for Mardi Gras?
Yeah, the Mardi Gras thing. So for anyone listening that's not familiar with this, around Mardi Gras, whoever they are, some people, they'll make these cakes called king cakes. And they will somewhere in there put a little toy baby that's supposed to represent Christ. And some people are kind of dumb and they put these hard plastic toys in there. And so in every bite, you have no idea if you're about to lose a tooth. And so you can never, you always eat this with a certain amount of caution. To some level, it feels like eating cake in the Somme. You can never totally relax.
In the 3rd grade, some of us took a French class and I dropped out after a couple of weeks, but some of us took a French class, and every time somebody had a birthday, they basically made us make a king cake. So,
it's French.
That's well, and my birthday never happened. Well, this happened, but yeah, Mardi Gras happens.
Weeks that you were in this class that you didn't drop out?
Yeah, and nobody choked on it, but there was plenty of people going, ah.
Yeah. Why can't we just look? I don't think anyone's theology is so weak as to be confused by, let's say you find a gummy bear and it's supposed to represent Jesus. We can just go with that. So
a gummy bear melts.
A jelly baby.
Yeah.
A jelly baby. Okay, I wasn't. Or you could do one of those. What are they called? The little sweet and sour.
Oh, like Sour
Patch Kids. There you go. You put a Sour Patch Kid in there. That wouldn't be so bad.
Things melt in baking heat?
Well, sort of.
Yeah.
Probably in a way.
What temperature does plastic melt at? I mean, how much of that, like if you get the baby, how much leached plastic did you get around that?
It is a good point.
Okay, I have to tell you guys about the one king cake in my life I've ever experienced. It was not this past year, it was last year, so 2016. This place that I used to volunteer at called Scrap, they do holiday themed things, and they decided that they were going to do like a king cake type thing for the volunteers. And so they did this sort of crescent roll version of it and baked, it into a ring, and then had it cut into slices and stuff. And that baby was ceramic. So if you think finding a plastic one is tough, they had a ceramic one in there.
What's the matter? I think I found it.
Yeah, I'm suddenly glad our savior wasn't a glass shard or a caltrip or a fistful of razor blades.
Yes, that sounds like a great movie title.
I just find it really,
razor blades.
Really odd that, like, if you find it, like, it's like you're the winner because you just spit out a toy
and tap with a tooth.
Yeah.
Haha, you got Jesus all slobbery.
Yeah. I never understood that. I never understood that. I mean, at least with the Cracker Jacks thing or the toy in a cereal box, it was always separate enough. It was not a surprise. I mean, what it was might be a surprise, but its existence, as you're pouring out the cereal, if you dump out the little plastic or cellophane packaging that has the toy in it, it's sitting there floating in the middle of your cereal. Unless you're really, really dumb or visually impaired or something, you're not going to eat this by accident. But I guess that's probably why they had to change the toys in the Cracker Jack boxes, because if somebody bites into a transferable tattoo, it's really not that big of a deal. As opposed to if they keep shipping them with, metal ball bearings or whatever they were doing, then I guess maybe that's a problem.
Ooh, magnet toys. How about that one? Ingestible little magnets. That would be a great one for Cracker Jacks.
Or something that just has the right type of solvency to knock loose a filling.
We'll have to work on that. So, you have written or created a role-playing game called Skies of Glass.
Yes.
Is this available? My first question is this available for anywhere?
No, I'm hoping to have it available within the, let's say, near to midterm. I am actually using the game that I'm running right now, the actual play, as a play test of sort of the way I always wanted the rules. There's a long and sordid history to the rules of Skies of Glass, but I'm using this particular go around of the game to test some of the rules, which is why the rules, they get a bit more sophisticated or change a little bit from game to game. As I'm play testing them out, and then I'm getting the commentary from the people that are listening, from the people that are playing, after which I do intend absolutely to put together a publishable version of it that people can grab so that they can play the game themselves.
So that she can be amazed by how awesome that is. How many of the other hosts have their own games written?
I know, let's see, I know at least Chad does, morningskystudios.com, though I think he was going to rename it, and I forget to what. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe I just made that up right now.
And Chad's the one with Blades in the Dark.
Yes, he didn't write Blaze in the Dark. Blaze in the Dark was written by, I don't remember his name. I'm sure he's a great guy. I just don't remember his name. But Chad has made several original and completely free games that can be downloaded off of Morning Sky, spelled with an E. With the exact address to that. Let's see. I know it's like something, maybe it's just morningsky.com. Oh, just Morning Sky. Yeah. So I was adding the studio onto it. It's just Morning Sky, Sky spelled with an E. And there are several games you can download there for free.
Well, he's totally going to get a link now because I'll have that up. And I know, so then John has Blood Moon Goblins, but that's not an original thing. That's like a campaign?
Correct. It's an original setting and campaign book, and you can find that just at, I think it's Blood Moon. Let's be sure. Blood Moon Goblins plural.com. Yeah, that's up there right now. Bloodmoongoblins.com, and it's not an original game, but it is an original setting and source book for playing goblins, and I think it was written for. It was either Pathfinder or D&D 3X. I mean, they're close enough. I'm not sure it matters too much. But it was an OGL product, and I don't remember who exactly he licensed it with.
So on top of the fact that you are in the luckiest group in the history of the United States with having so many GMs you don't know what to do with yourself, you all have some form of creative thing going on with inventing campaigns and or games entirely.
You know, I don't think the two are separate. I think that what drives a person to GM is oftentimes the desire to create. It's the desire to take something that's in your head and to want to see it. See how the world reacts to it, see it played out, see it get told. There's something in there that you want to share. And so I think what drives somebody to Game Master and what drives somebody to creative endeavors in general, if they're not identical, they're certainly highly overlapping. And so it doesn't surprise me in the least that in my experience, the people that want to write and publish their own stuff are almost invariably GMs. And many GMs, not all, but many GMs have a strong urge to get something of theirs written, shared, out there, published, told, whatever. So I wouldn't separate the two.
So then I shouldn't feel weird that I want to do the same thing.
I don't think you should in the least. In fact, it's great. I mean, the stories we tell are such an important part of who we are. You know, I mean, that was something that authors have talked about for a long time, is the importance of story, the importance of myth. I mean, I'm sure you've walked out of a movie before that somehow really struck a chord with you, and you just walked out and they're pumped up to do something. Yeah, I mean, I know I walk out of a really good Batman movie, and I'm just ready to go find some mugger in the parking lot, kick his ass. You know, it's just it gets you excited, right? I mean, but these stories, they tell us who we want to be. They prepare us for the difficulties of life. They give us a sense of what it's like to face adversity. It gives us these images to look to, both as warning and as a point of inspiration. So I think it's want to tell stories and want to share stories. And I think that storytelling is something that we have in modern or postmodern society downplayed to our own detriment.
I think that if she was to listen to the Fear the Boot AP, that she might be more inclined to want to participate, because you guys, especially in that session, the prologue session, I almost wept when it was over, because it was like, oh, they worked together and they used all kinds of things that I hear in all kinds of podcasts all over the place, and it worked and it was awesome. And I'm not super enthused about the setting, but you know what? I'm gonna keep going. I'm infamously I hate D&D. Since I stopped playing it decades ago. The setting just drives me nuts. I've been out of it so long, though it's changed immeasurably since then.
Well, which setting? Because of course D&D is really more of a settingless rules set. I would say there's an implied setting that I think the rules create.
That it's the implied, because when I was playing it, I don't even know if Advanced had come out yet.
Oh, so you're talking way back.
Yeah. So when I left D&D, it's because the guy that was running it moved, and the rest of us were kind of like lost for a little while, and then I decided to purchase Shadowrun, and we had started playing Shadowrun, and then I joined the Navy and left, which is where I thought after that, I was like, I kind of want to try something new. And we said this on the pre-show, but I'll tell everybody now that I was wanting to do, I had a thing for giant robots at the time, so I wanted to do BattleTech. So I started looking for people that were interested in possibly playing BattleTech. And that's when I met a guy named Chris, who's like, I don't know anything about BattleTech, but I would be interested to introduce you to vampires. So that was that, and that was in December of 1994. And I haven't played another game of a different rule set since.
So what specifically turned you off to D&D? Because this is not a point that actually I'm even prepared to debate, because I don't necessarily think it's a wrong opinion to have. I'm just curious to understand it.
I think, and I don't think I hate it as much as I used to, but I think that I was tired of the goblins and orcs and elves and dwarves, and I was tired of Tolkien. Was tired of this. I don't even know if I can formulate words. I was so. I know that one of the things that drove me nuts was the heavy duty. You roll for everything, because the guy that was running it wanted to roll every time the game suggested you should roll for something. So we were falling off of horses all the time, and we had a hard time talking to people, all kinds of stuff. And maybe it was just my experience that turned me off, but I mean, I didn't have any other experience.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It is certainly fair to pick up a role-playing game and to say that I don't like it as it is, to which you have the option of course, house ruling it or changing some things around. But there does come a point where you have changed so much that you might as well, why are you playing this game at all? You might as well get a different game or write your own game or something else. So I think it is perfectly fair to look at D&D and say, you know, for me, D&D is that game. I don't like playing D&D. Based on what you just said, though, it sounds to me like you had the same issue that I had, which is the issue was never D&D itself. It was a combination of two things. One is the fact that there is this sort of default mode in which everyone runs D&D. You know, the type of game that I am running with Skies of Glass is the exact same type of game that I would run if I was running D&D. The trappings would be different, but the basic idea of high story, you know, high intrigue, you know, I'd use their rule structure for combat and things like that. So there would be some differences. but it's not as if suddenly I would lose my ability to tell a story. That's not what people tend to do with D&D. It tends to be kill and loot, kill and loot, kill and loot, kill and loot. But the other thing is you talked about going back to AD&D, and in the early editions of D&D, there was this, and it wasn't just D&D, many of the role-playing games that were coming out in the late 70s, early 80s, all had this idea that if something was going to occur, it had to be randomized. And so there were charts and tables, I mean, for everything. You couldn't do anything without there being some kind of a chart you were supposed to roll percentile dice on to see exactly how that turned out. And it got very tedious. And I don't think it helped that there were a lot of circulars going around, Dungeon Magazine, Dragon Magazine, those were hardly the only ones, that oftentimes fluffed out their content. They filled their pages by adding to all of that, by creating more tables and more stuff. And people, I mean, it was treated canonically, and so it became part of the game.
I can also, if I think back, it was pretty much a kill and loot. It was more of a, we just want to kill things for a while, and there wasn't a whole lot of story involved. That's why I was so happy to find Shadowrun, because it was like 90% story and not so much combat anymore, as in comparison.
Yeah, well, especially if you're running Shadowrun to its rules, combat, it may not be quite as lethal as Skies of Glass, but it's bad. I mean, to get shot in that game, assuming that penetrate and do damage, and I'll admit I'm a couple editions behind on my rules, but at least last I played it, it had a pretty good chance of doing some pretty nasty stuff to you. I mean, yeah, it was a simplified like 10-point wound counter, but as you went up that, you started taking penalties to every die you rolled. And a 1 point or 2 point or 3 point penalty when you're rolling a D6, that's a big deal. You know, I mean, that's by the time you hit -2 or -3, you generally weren't succeeding at anything. And so you were just huddled over in a corner with blood pouring out of a wound. And so what did you fill that with? You filled that with story. But it wasn't just that. It was how the game presented itself. You pick up a D&D book. How does the D&D book present itself? You know, does it show scenes of intrigue? Does it show, you know, concepts of story? I mean, no, not really, only in the simplest sense. You see people casting spells. You see people stabbing orcs. You see people taking down dragons and giants and opening treasure chests. And you get a sense from the moment you open the book, this is what the game's about. Shadowrun is very different. Shadowrun from the outset tells itself as being a story about existing within a system that's very overbearing, about dealing with people that may have something in mind that's mutually beneficial or be prepared to throw you to the wolves. It's about living double lives or living life in hiding. It's about dealing with contacts, some of whom you may barely know. It's about trying to do what you have to pay the bills or to throw some anarchy into a system that has grown completely out of control. And the art and the story and the side text and all stuff, it reflects that. And so there's this implied bit of there's this concept that's conveyed to you from the moment you open the book that's like, huh, so that's what this is about.
And back then, that's all anybody ever wanted to do, unfortunately. So,
oh, it still is for a lot of people. I mean, I'm sitting here holding a copy of D&D 5e right now, and you know, I mean, I'm going through some of the art in it, and I mean, right here on the cover, you have, I don't know how well it's coming across the camera, but it's a woman jumping at a giant, trying to kill it. And, you know, I mean, as I'm thumbing through it, most of these pictures are people posing with weapons. It's people fighting monsters. It's people breaking open treasure chests. It's, okay, here's one of a bard dancing on a table singing a song, but of course that's the generic, well, tavern's where we go to get our adventure. And actually, unsurprisingly, I made it about 4 pages before I get to the bar fight. So that's what you do in the taverners. You get the adventurers, start a bar fight, and then go back out and kill more. And I'm not saying that's what D&D is, but I'm saying that's very much how the game presents itself. And I think people, unsurprisingly, pick up on that. That's what they see the game as being about. So that's what the game presents itself as being about.
And I've never been. Since I've left D&D, I've never been super. I wanted to tell the story. I haven't wanted to be a combat monkey. So when I was introduced to Vampire, I saw the potential there. But one of the guys that was in the gaming group in the Navy, the only way we could keep his interest was to have combat fairly often. So there was a lot of story, but there was almost as much combat, which is unfortunate. And I just haven't been able to get out of White Wolf's systems since. Now, I've at one point I could run Werewolf the Apocalypse from memory, all of the books, but I can't do that anymore. That's been decades. But I mean, I would sit down with a bunch of people that were interested in playing, and I would just start running it, and they're like, "How do you know all this?" I'm like, "I've done it so many times. Just keep going."
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's unfortunate because of the fact that I don't. I mean, while I think if I was to set these books up, I might design them a little bit differently to show a greater diversity of what's available. I don't ultimately blame the games. The games, they're just toolkits. They give you rules, they give you concepts. A role-playing game does not tell you the stories to tell. It does not tell you anywhere in the D&D main books, at least not any edition I've seen, that there must be a combat encounter at this interval, that any amount of character or role-playing or dialogue can only last for so long. You know, these are not things that the game requires. And I have run D&D games and played in D&D games that were very light on the combat, that were very light on the tropes of going into the tavern to have the brawl and whatever. But if I walk through the halls of a convention, what you're describing is exactly what I see. It's particularly like, you know, one of the larger conventions like Gen Con or something like that. That's what you're describing is precisely how it goes down and how the game is played.
Where does
okay, now
Gen
somebody
Con happen at?
I'm sorry?
Where does Gen Con happen at?
Gen Con is typically in the summer or fall in Indianapolis.
What is Gen Con?
Con this year just occurred. It was in
Or what
it
is
was like maybe a month.
I don't know
short
what the
for it?
Gen stands for, but Gen Con.
Oh, what the Gen stands for? I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. So I think my wife just got home. So I
No, I
thought they
asked.
said where.
Well,
No, he did. He did.
First of all, I don't know what the Gen stands for, but we'll get to that. But Gen Con it's a role-playing version of the cons we have here for comics.
Yes,
Whoa.
it's about.
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
Gen Con is actually it is primarily tabletop role playing games. You would be surprised how diverse though that hobby has gotten and the number of things it's come to include. For example, there are whole games now that center around building things with Legos,
Oh my
and then
God.
and then you play out the games with the Lego creations. And even before all the Lego stuff, there's a role playing game that centers around baking gingerbread men.
Ooh.
And the adventures of the gingerbread men, these actual gingerbread cookies you have around the house. But to answer your question of what does the Gen stand for, Gen Con was originally closer to Gary Gygax's home. It was held in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And so it was Lake Geneva Convention or Gen Con.
Okay.
And Lake Geneva could not accommodate it once it hit a pretty substantial size. And so they moved it to Indianapolis, Indiana. And that's now where it's currently held.
Well, my best friend lives in Warsaw, Indiana, so that would give me another excuse to go into that direction. But even though she doesn't want to necessarily go there.
I don't know how far Warsaw is from Indianapolis, but Indianapolis.
Well, closer than Portland.
But yes, it's closer than Portland, Oregon. So that's if I gotta. How far are those two? So Warsaw, Indiana to Indianapolis. Of course, if she doesn't want to go, it's only about 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
After we moved out here, there's Comic Cons out here, and
Yes.
there's a couple of what's Komoricon?
That's an anime.
Anime, yeah, that's the other one. There's a couple of those, and well, in retro gaming, but I volunteer at all of them, so I don't necessarily always have an interest in what's going on at everything that I volunteer at, but I pretty much volunteer at every kind of con, well, most of them that we have out here.
And because of that, I have met so many awesome celebrities.
Yeah, I say. So what is it you volunteer to do? If you're at a convention you don't even like, what is it you volunteer to do?
Well, so like the anime ones are the ones that I'm really completely out of my element. And generally there's one called Komoricon and there's one called NewCon. And NewCon is because it happens as close to New Year's as possible.
Okay.
And boy, at NewCon, I was registration. I took people's money and gave them their badges and registered them. At Komoricon, I am staff for the info booth, so I do a lot of directing. Directing traffic, answering questions, handing out information.
How could that possibly be any less boring than a convention, even about something you don't like?
I need to be kept busy.
Okay.
This is why I'm knitting.
Okay, all right, I follow. I'm just trying to piece this together. Like, I'm not interested in what's going on at the con, so I'm going to do registration.
Yeah. And then I get to meet all of the people that are like thrilled to death that they're at NewCon and they're dressed up as things I don't know, and I get to ask them, and they get to, proudly describe what they made themselves into and what they are and what show it's from. And
the weirdest thing that she has seen that she has taken a picture of, and then we've had to look it up, there was this group of people that dressed as a volleyball team from an anime thing, so we watched one episode of it, and I was so confused.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it. I know what you're talking about.
And there were so many of them, so many.
Yeah, there's another one that's Food Wars or something about that's like about a cooking competition.
That was one of them. I ended up sitting in the hallway after I was done volunteering because a guy's cell phone was dying, and I always bring spare batteries and stuff. And so I ended up hanging out with these people in the hallway that I don't know, so he could charge his cell phone, and they were trying to explain anime in general to me and tell me like what I should try to watch if I've never watched it before. And so I got a very interesting lesson that I came home with and tried to share, and I mean it never stuck. The only anime that I've honestly ever gotten into is Ruby. And those girls were actually, the voice actors were here a couple months ago for Rose City Comic Con.
I do watch a tiny bit of anime, but I have learned that I have a very particular, I'm into mecha. It has to be mecha. My favorite is Strain, Strategic Armored Infantry. I love Robotech. I started watching Gargantua, but I haven't gotten very far into it. If there's no mech in it, I don't know that my attention span can last it, other than Ruby. I mean, we both love Ruby.
Yeah, I think so when you look at anime, there are people you're going to run into, particularly at these conventions, that they're not fans of just a particular anime. They're fans of anime, period.
Right.
And I think those people at times can be, I mean, God love them if they're into something, whatever, it doesn't hurt me. But they can at times be a bit off-putting because of the fact that I think they lose the ability to distinguish between the fact that anime is no different than any other form of entertainment. It's not as if all books of one genre are good or bad or whatever. You know, I can turn on American dramas and I can say, these ones I enjoy, these ones I don't. These ones I think the bell curve of people don't enjoy, and these ones the bell curve of people do enjoy. And so I can probably recommend some to you. But when you go to these conventions, a lot of times you're running into the super fans, not just of an anime, but of anime with a capital A and a period after it. And so they kind of lose that ability to distinguish the fact that anime is not, it's not always going to work.
Yeah.
And anime is also very, very, a lot of it is very quickly produced. The entertainment culture in Japan, one of the things, and this is not true of everything, they have intellectual properties that have been around forever, but generally speaking, their intellectual properties tend to be more disposable. You know, whereas we have characters like Batman and Superman and whatever, and these stories go on for decades. We can say the same thing about Transformers, G.I. Joe. I mean, there's so many. We tend to hold on to our materials. And yes, there are fads that come and go. But
I think it's because the boys that were entertained by it as children have grown into adults that continue to produce it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we grew into adults that have disposable income and can spend way too much money on Mr. Freeze. And I don't care who says it's an Officer Pod or a Glaub, spend way too much money on a Marauder. And but no, but that's, you know, it's a concept within American entertainment that we hold on to our ideas a little bit longer. In Japan, they're very disposable. You know, most of these animes will only run a very, very short run, and it's over. You know, you go to a train station, you pick up a manga book, you read it on the subway, you get to your destination, and boom, it's gone. I mean, especially talking about like Tokyo or something, they don't have the space to store it. And I don't want to overgeneralize. I don't want to say everything in one country is like this and everything in one country is like that. I'm only speaking to a trend here, but that's what the trend is. And so when you look at anime, you have to be fairly picky, because oftentimes the gatekeepers are not going to be totally honest with you about how good something is.
Well, right.
And
super fans,
I don't think they always
they're rose-colored glasses. I mean,
yeah, and I don't think they even understand necessarily how shallow or disposable some of the ideas were from the outset. That it's fun and it's flash and it's whatever and it's great, you can cosplay as it, but it's not the sort of thing that has a lot of stories to tell before it's gone. And
my favorite strain has literally 12 episodes. That's it. And I love it. I wish there was so much more, but that's it.
Oh yeah, my top two animes. One is Grave of the Fireflies, which is a drama. It's a movie. It's a standalone movie, 90 minutes, maybe 120 minutes. And it's a standalone drama because in America, cartoons are for kids. In Japan, cartoon is just a medium. And it's a very adult story about two orphan children trying to survive on the streets during World War II. And it is a very, very, it's not a fun story at all. It's a very heart-wrenching story. It's a very serious story. It's you don't want to cosplay as Grave of the Fireflies. But my other one, I believe also has 12 episodes, the same as yours, is One Punch Man.
Oh,
you guys talk about that stuff?
I love One Punch Man. It is this total subversion.
Yeah, I was told to watch that one through my 1 year at NewCon too. I'm pretty sure that one was brought up several times.
Well, and the great thing about One Punch Man is it's absurdist humor. What you are going to see in One Punch Man is not something that's supposed to be taken seriously. The show is making fun of itself. It is making fun of the tropes of superhero stories. It's making fun of the emptiness and the banality of modern life. But it just does it with a superhero story. And it's a show where the point where you're laughing, there wasn't a punchline. it's just this total subversion of all of these things that you would expect. And if you go in there expecting to be like, oh, this show's a comedy in a sitcom style format, you're going to be horribly disappointed, because that's not what it is. But it's, I guess, in the same way, The Simpsons just very, very, at times, dryly riffs on the American family, or, you know, that sort of white picket fence sort of dream of things. That's what One Punch Man is, partially for the banalities of life, much like The Simpsons is, but also about superhero stories and the hero stories, because the joke of the show is the most powerful man in the universe is mediocre and empty and bored and listless and does not even realize how powerful he is. And the entire story is occurring around him. And then he'll just go out there and, like, there's this giant villain that's wrecking the city and killing everybody, and they're calling out all of their Supermans and Batmans, you know, their equivalent of those characters, and they can't stop it. And this guy will wander out of his apartment, and the thing's in his way to go to dollar off day at the supermarket, and so he'll punch it dead just so he can get there to reach his sale, because he's unemployed, so he doesn't have any money. It's I don't know how to describe this show, and it's the sort of thing either you'll get it or you won't. But if you get it, I love it. I absolutely. They're doing a second season, and I can't wait.
I think that description was certainly nothing that I got out of anyone else, but honestly, that would be the description that would make me want to watch it, because it does seem very. It's not.
You know what's hard to explain is One Punch Man when you've heard it from you guys, and then me trying to explain it to her.
Well, hey, I got a front row seat to the explanation.
Well, or I give you a middleman. Are you familiar with the comedian Bill Burr? No, okay. He's if he's not an A-list comedian, he's very close to it. He's on Conan a fair amount. He's got some HBO specials and some Netflix specials and whatever. And Bill Burr also does a podcast, and I'm not going to endorse the podcast because it's got some pretty rough content. But if you go onto YouTube and you look up Bill Burr, last name spelled B-U-R-R, and just do Bill Burr One Punch Man, he did about a 5, 10, 15-minute commentary or meta commentary on the show after he was convinced to watch it, because he had the same thing. He's like, I don't want to watch anime. I can't stand the concept of it. And somebody strong-armed him into watching One Punch Man, and he was hooked. And afterwards, he got on his podcast and explained what the show is like. And I think his explanation is pretty close to the one that I would give.
Now, I
found it.
I know one thing that has generally turned me off of it is if I have to read subtitles, I don't want to watch it, specifically because, again, I am always doing something with my hands. I'm always looking at something else. The TV is there as like the second form of entertainment to me.
Okay, so One Punch Man might be a little hard to consume. There is both there's a dubbed version that's in English, and then there is also a subtitled version that's in Japanese with English subtitles. But there's a lot of the humor that's visual humor.
Yeah.
Where if you're not watching the screen, where there's this fight where everybody's excited, but Saitama, or not, is Saitama's name, but One Punch Man, whatever his real name is, I forget his name, is walking past this, and he is just dead-eyed, and his eyes are just these Charlie Brown pupils with no iris around them, and just the things that are going on around him, and oftentimes with no sound effects, no whatever, as he's thinking about just the most banal and stupid things. It's visual humor that if you're not looking at the screen, you're going to miss at least some percentage of it.
And I do have a good handful of TV shows that I watch that he doesn't. So when I'm home during the day and he's gone, I watch stuff. And I know that there's a definite list of things that I watch where I know that I can't be cooking in the kitchen or, folding laundry and just listening or something because I get that. Those are easier when I am doing knitting or something like that, or working on my website, and at least I'm facing the TV and sitting in one location.
Yeah, and it's not a hard show to consume. I believe it's only 12 episodes, maybe less. It's something around 12 episodes, and the episodes are only about 20 some odd minutes in length. This is not some, okay, let's binge every season to date of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
It's not like that. This is something that you can binge watch in like an evening or two. Or watch more slowly over the course of a few days, but it's a very quick show to consume.
So, something I realized after you asked me why do I volunteer at these things that I have no interest in.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I forgot to say when we moved here a couple years ago, that was how I got myself to learn Portland.
Okay, well that makes sense.
I know nobody here. I know nothing here. I don't work outside of the house. So I volunteer to get immersed in what happens here. So I do volunteer for things that I'm interested in too. I volunteer at our Comic-Cons where I usually end up working the photo ops area, or we had a Heroes and Villains Fan Fest, which was Walker Stalker and Heroes or something. I don't know. It was a combination of like CW shows and The Walking Dead,
superhero
basically.
shows and The Walking Dead were the two.
Yeah. Okay.
And they were here for the first time in, I think, June or so. And I ended up on the celebrity escort team. So I got to wear a shirt that said, what was it, like VIP escort on the back of it, both in con and in public for
that sounds a bit unintentionally salacious.
We did have a lot of fun with it because most of our team was girls. And it was basically our whole team, the like 14 of us or whatever. It was basically our job to make sure that important person A got from location 1 to location 2 on time. And me and 2 other girls, we were actually assigned the green room. And so most of my job was taking grown men to the bathroom all weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
and I know
in a shirt that said VIP escort.
Yeah.
And I know that we
go ahead.
I know that we know what you do for a living because we asked you beforehand, and anybody that listens to your show will know. She just said that she doesn't work outside the house. I'm a mailman, so that you understand that I know things because I've been around in delivering things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, before we moved here, I had my own business. I had a dog treat business in North Dakota, and I had a store and everything. And so then after we moved here, I kind of took a little time off, and then I started working from home again. So that again goes back to the creation. I mean, you guys create stories. I have to create with my hands. That's my outlet. So I do a whole lot of stuff, and cook and things like that. But yeah, so I walked men to the bathroom for a weekend, and we had Stan Lee here last year at one of the cons, and when I was working the photo ops booth, it wasn't me, but another girl got to watch him while he napped.
Which at his age, I'm guessing, is a fairly frequent thing.
Yes, yeah. The photo op sessions with Stan Lee, I mean, hundreds.
People don't
and hundreds
realize
of
this.
people.
That man is going to die soon.
Oh no, I'm sure
He's still going to cons now.
I know.
Like he's
That's
still.
He doesn't make any money anywhere else.
No. So I end up working in the photo ops areas with the celebrities or with directing the people traffic, basically making sure the pictures go smoothly or handing them out or crowd control.
This, Dan, is the top of a shoe insert that I cut off that doesn't fit into my shoe with a string tied to it that my cat is fetching.
Our
That's
cat
what I was guessing, because I kept watching you do that. And I'm like, so does he just have this like ongoing game of horseshoes that
with the cat.
Yeah, but no, I then gather it's like, no, the cat must be playing fetch with it, because I've seen cats do that before, play fetch.
She just started,
and it's only with this.
Yeah,
That's
it's not with anything else. You can't get her to fetch another single thing on the planet, and
very sad.
we have to put that away at night. We have to hide it, otherwise she comes and brings it to bed and yells at us to play with her. And so it's intense. And then not this weekend, but next weekend, we have a retro gaming expo.
They'll bring a bunch of Nintendo games and old style cabinet arcade games and
pinball machines.
The reason I was going in the first place was pinball machines. I don't think I'm going to go this year. I don't have to drive.
They have some free play areas with all these games where you basically pay to get in, and then everything's set to free play. So people come and play all these arcade games and stuff for hours and hours. They have panels at them too. They usually have like a museum setup of stuff, and then of course all your vendors and everything. But usually at the Retro Gaming Expo, they have a lot of former Atari employees. You need to get that. I think she
can't reach.
Well, it's on my tower of roving for making dryer balls, and roving is made out of wool, and cats like to eat wool, so it's just a big
Every
mess.
once in a while, I'll throw it into a place where if I don't retrieve it, something's going to break, and that was one of those options.
She likes to eat that stuff. It's like eating cotton balls. And Retro Gaming Expo is next weekend, and there will be like I said, former Atari employees giving talks and stuff, and all these YouTube people that I don't know because I'm not 14.
Nobody does. YouTube people, look, I guess.
All the 14-year-olds that come to Retro Gaming Expo.
Yeah, I could, off the top of my head, name maybe half a dozen or a dozen quote-unquote YouTube celebrities, and I could actually identify face-to-face probably none of them. Even though it's a video format, right? It's you see them face-to-face. I don't think I could recognize any of them. But
I couldn't tell the YouTube special guests apart from the people attending the convention.
Up until PewDiePie got in trouble for being a racist, I thought he was black.
Well, the other one that that's become a running joke because everyone thought he was black and he wasn't, is one of the ones that I've taken to listening to lately. And I don't know that I could recommend him to a lot of people because I find him funny, but he has the sort of humor that is you're either going to love it or it's going to be like nails on a chalkboard. It's a guy by the name of, he goes by Video Game Donkey. And he had the voice that he has. Everybody thought he was a black guy, and then he did an episode where he did a face reveal. No, he's a white guy, and so it's become a running joke of like, they'll like his girlfriend. She has her own channel, so she'll film them like going to a convention, and it's like, why are you with that guy? Why are you cheating on your boyfriend? Who's this white guy you picked up?
Oh my god. I know at Retro Gaming Expo one year there were two YouTube guys who were sharing a booth, I think, and all of these girls came up and they're like, when is so and so going to be back at his booth to sign autographs? And I'm like, I'm not really sure. They kind of set their own schedules, and then they like got all kind of quiet and weird, and they were looking at somebody and they're like, oh my god, that's whatever the guy's name is, and he was the partner in that booth. And I'm like, oh, okay, so like you guys think that he might know when this person will be back in the booth for autographs? And they're like, well, yeah, he might know. I'm like, okay, hang on. And I like go over to the guy. I'm like, hey, I'm, a volunteer here. Nice to meet you. These girls are wondering if so-and-so is going to be back at the booth for autographs later. And we like talk for a little bit and stuff. I go back over to the girls. They're like, I can't believe you talked to him.
Well, apparently I'm in the wrong line of business. I need to switch from doing podcasting to doing...
It was... Well, another thing that made me laugh so much at one of the retro gaming expos was there's two guys that are like game historians or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave a panel. They had a panel, and then they signed autographs. And so I was running the table for these two guys, bringing the people in, and some of them wanted pictures taken with their cell phones, so I was taking pictures with them, with these guys and everything. And then the line's finally done and they're ready to go back to their booth, and I was talking to them a little bit, and the one guy's talking about like having to go back to work on Monday because he's a FedEx driver. It's just so funny to to these people are like 100% normal people, and
well, except for the rare outlier, YouTube also doesn't pay that much, especially after they started their big blitz to, and there's some politics behind this I don't want to get into, but they started this big blitz by which they basically removed the revenue from a lot of people. And while it tended towards one side of the political spectrum, it was not exclusively so. And they defunded a lot of people, making it even harder for these people if they don't have something to back it up, like a Patreon account or something like that. It's very hard for them to make a living doing those videos. What they make off of ad revenue, I mean, it was always such a small amount to begin with. They made it up on volume. You may only make a tiny amount of money per view, but when you're getting millions of views, well, that's going to rack up to something. But then YouTube cut off a lot of those funding sources for a lot of people, and that left these people looking to other sources of income like Patreon, or and of course there are people that just never made that much money to begin with, where they make enough money to justify keep doing it, or to pay for the hardware it takes to do it, or things like that. But they still have to work a day job to pay the bills and whatever. It's just that's their passion, as they want to hop on YouTube and do whatever. I tell you, the great thing about retro gaming, as a child of the 80s, the great thing about retro gaming is there was a place that opened up right across from where I work, and I think it's closed now, but it was a retro arcade where they had all the old quarter coin out machines, and they didn't change the price on them, so they're all still a quarter. Well, in the 1980s, when you're a kid, a quarter is a lot harder to come by than it is in 2015, 2016, whatever it was when I went there as an adult with my own income. And so I could walk in and cash out a $10 bill into quarters. It was no big deal. And actually see the end of some of these games. Like, how does Bad Dudes end? And the answer is it ends with a very, very muscle-bound Ronald Reagan taking you out for hamburgers. It was horribly like this. So this is the Japanese stereotype of us, because that's how the game ends. Is it starts off with are you a bad enough dude to save the president? And when you find out you are, it's Ronald Reagan giving a speech in front of the White House with player 1 on the right and player 2 on the left, and he's wearing this. He looks like he has the physique of like a young, like one of the McMahons, because he's wearing this suit. But it's kind of tight. You can just see these bulging muscles like all through. He's just ripped, which, okay, Ronald Reagan, whatever you thought of him politically, he was never ripped as a president. But I mean, he is just ripped. And he's holding, for no reason, here he is on the lawn of the White House, for no reason while he's giving this speech, he's holding a hamburger. And the end of his speech is, something like, ha ha ha, let's go out for hamburgers now.
Wow.
So I guess this is how we do things around here.
For reference, how old are you?
How old am I now? I'm 40.
Okay, I'm 41. So
Okay.
I was trying to establish when in reference to when I was a kid, you would. So we would have been kids basically at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was, as far as arcade like consoles go, I mean cabinets. I was into like Sinistar and Time Pilot 84 is a huge favorite of mine, and I've been gushing about it for decades. And then at the last retro gaming convention, it was there.
You found it.
I played it so much that I got cramps in both of my forearms.
Rampage is another one. I think that one actually may have been 90s, but I don't remember when it came out. Rampage was another one that was great. But there's all these games you never. I mean, a quarter is a lot of money unless you were really good. I mean, really, really, really good. And I mean, if you went to those arcades back when arcades were a thing, you'd go to the mall and you'd walk into one of these arcades. There was always at least that one guy or whatever who could pop in one quarter and play for an hour or two. And and of course you'd line your quarters across the top of the cabinet. That was your way of reserving your place, as if, I'm not sure it was ever clear whose quarter was whose, but it worked.
Everybody,
people respected that. But you never saw the end of these games. You never saw how they actually panned out because you just didn't have the money to do it.
That's why I got into pinball as much as I did. And our little hometown Beulah mini mart,
yeah,
they had a rotating pinball machine that came in. So when just one at a time, and when they got the Terminator 2 Judgment Day one, it seemed to last like 6 times as long as any other pinball machine did. I became so good at it. I refuse to play it anymore because I literally can't stop cracking the machine. I mean, the free game just keeps popping and popping and popping. So I'm playing it one night, waiting for my friend to pick me up. He finally showed up, but this other dude walked in. He's like, "Oh, I want the next game. Like, just take over from me." And he looked at the score and he looked at what ball I was on. He's like, "You got this on one ball?" Like, I've been here for like 2 hours waiting for him. He's like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, just take it. There's 3 free games on there right now. Just go ahead and play.
Yeah, there's something that I think, okay, so there's like state gaming commissions, and most states have gambling, that come in to make sure that the games are fair, they're not rigged, there's not a magnet under the roulette machine, or, whatever. So I firmly believe, just as an advocacy thing, that they ought to, before they can put out an arcade game, they ought to say, you cannot release this game until you have somebody who plays the game start to finish on one pay. Whatever that is, 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, whatever it is that it costs to play the game, that if you cannot prove to us this game can be beaten on a single cost, that this is not a game that's cheating you. And I think there's a legal basis for this. Now, this is me just joking more than being serious, but you can do this. There's a distinction in the law between games of skill and games of chance. If the game is set up such that you cannot get past a point without getting hurt or without dying, then it ceases, in my opinion, to be a game of skill. And so I would love for them to, and this is just me having kind of my weird Gen X version of Ralph Nader, but I would love to have them require that to sell an arcade game or to put them out there, they have to prove it can be beaten. I mean, the person can be good, just unbelievably good, right? They can be great at the game. This is their splinter skill, but somebody has to do it. If you cannot beat it, that's on one coin.
That's when you get the competitions with the Pac-Man and the Donkey Kong, where the one guy holds all the records because he proved he can. I mean, he plays the game until the game doesn't know what to do anymore, so it just fades out or crashes.
Yeah, there's and I don't know if this is urban legend or truth, but there was a persistent story in the 80s that there was somebody that actually got Pac-Man to its max score and apparently the data type for the variable that was used to maintain the score, rather than resetting to 0, so like if it got to however many 9s in a row, instead of resetting to 0, it would attempt to keep adding to that, which would cause what in computing you call a memory overrun or buffer overrun. There's a few names for it. But basically you overrun the data type and it would crash the game. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that was there were all these urban legends that such a unicorn existed.
It is true. The guy that holds the record for doing it the fastest, he's infamous for he's famous for being the record holder for all kinds of video games. I know his first name is Billy. We watched a documentary on him. The guy is a complete douchebag. I mean, he's an absolute douchebag. So, what game I can't remember what game it was, but the documentary is about this one specific game. Maybe it's Donkey Kong. And he had the record. So this other guy, the whole documentary is about this guy trying to beat his record, and he finally does it on camera. And that Billy guy literally hands a VHS tape in, which is how they verify that these things are real, with a higher score on it, just so he could keep the record. What a dick!
So he had revealed one record
score and handed it in.
So all right, so if I'm following the story right, he had won on one record, but actually done better and banked it just so he could
pull it out when somebody beat his other record.
Just so he could cockblock somebody else.
Yes. This guy's a complete asshole.
Yeah, that's
I wanted to.
Wow.
I remember there was an urban legend about something in one of the retro gaming books.
And since I'm pretty sure it's Donkey Kong, it's the King of Kong is the documentary. Is now that I'm thinking about it.
Wow, what a jackass! I mean, just start with your highest score and see if somebody can beat it. That's unbelievable.
Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell holds the records for Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, just a slew of them, and he's got the long hair, like he still lives in the 80s. He's just a complete ass. But
yeah, and how many years, if it's a VHS tape, how many years was he sitting on this? Just, by the way, what real karma would have been, VHS tapes being what they are, they do age. If they'd gone to put it in there and it didn't play, or the tape broke or disintegrated or something like that, that would have been beautiful karma. Because to just hold on to this for all those years just to whip it out to piss on somebody else's parade, that's unbelievably ignorant.
He is. I mean, if you watch this documentary, if you ever do, and you see Billy Mitchell and you see how he acts and see how he carries himself, and then see him actually do this to that poor guy that worked really hard to do this score thing, he is just, I've never seen a bigger douchebag on film.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a picture of him right now, and actually, he does just look like an asshole. I mean, okay, so this is terrible. You ever been sitting there watching the news and they're like, hey, we just, police just arrested some long-running pedophile or whatever, and you take one look, it's like, yeah, that guy looks like a pedophile.
Well, we live in a place where that happens a lot.
This guy, I mean, one look at his face, it's like, wow, this is an asshole.
It's just the way he did everything. You're like, oh my God, I hate you. Will you get hit by a bus or something?
Oh, this is an urban I knew. Okay. I went and dug my book out from the Retro Gaming Expo from 2015 because I remember there being some urban legend thing in it. But it's just a Portland one. It's
Polybius.
Portland's video game urban legend. It says a game that was said to have briefly appeared in several arcades around Portland during the early 1980s. People who claim to have played the game, or in most cases know someone who did, say that the machine caused a number of side effects ranging from anxiety and depression to night terrors, suicide, and even sudden death. So, that's an interesting one too. Some believe the game was a product of the CIA's controversial MK Ultra program and experiment in mind control targeting youth. Although the game's mysteries are vast, no one has ever been able to confirm the cabinet's existence. Many agree it was nothing more than a hoax. Let's see here.
So the game, does the game even have a title, or is it just like the MK Ultra game? Like
Polybius?
Polybius.
Polybius. Okay, I didn't get it.
Yeah, Polybius.
So there was, now this one's not an urban legend, it's also not half so exciting. there was a video game that was put out by the FBI, which was a game, this one I'm all but 100% sure was in the 90s. It was a game called Narc.
Yes.
And you played two guys out there fighting drug dealers. And in the game, I mean, to give you a concept of the message the game had, if you got, like, the bad guys would, of course, shoot at you, and that did some amount of damage, we'll call X. I don't remember what it was, but some percentage of your health bar. But some of them would also throw heroin needles at you, and if they hit you with one of the heroin needles, that did many times X. So, I mean, that did, like, so the game had a really, really strong, you know, anti-drug dealer, anti-drug culture sort of message to it. But it was actually a game that was designed, funded, and put out there by the FBI as sort of a, I don't know, public education, public indoctrination. I don't know what you want to call it.
Huh.
But what your political views are. But it was a thing. That's not an urban legend, because it actually said in the credits screen that the FBI funded the game. It was a fun game. I thoroughly enjoyed playing the game. And I think one of the funniest things about it was the final boss was a guy named Mr. Big. And I think really all he wanted to do was to be the next to be with me. And
like, how long have you had that joke waiting? Do you try to talk about this game a lot so you can throw that in?
No, you know, I should at this point say I've been waiting like 25 years to drop this joke, but I actually haven't been. That one actually just came to me right now. But no, the guy at the end of the game, the final villain of Narc really was. He was this like weird, like human robot mashup thing called Mr. Big.
Now, when I heard that, I thought of the guy on Sex and the City, not the band. But you know, I am the only girl.
I say, yeah, I have not watched Sex and the City, so I think I watched part of one episode because I don't even know why.
I've seen some, but I just know that they always talked about that character, even when if they were on something else being interviewed or something, he was always talked about.
It's oddly not a terrible show.
The only thing I noted about the show in my like 15 minutes of I don't even know why I was watching it, but like my 15-minute foray into it, the only thing I noticed was the character that was actually the most attractive was the one that the writing treated as the least attractive, and the because they were always like, you know, cooing over Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall. But there was a brunette.
Blondes.
The brunette.
The brunette. I have no idea who she is, but I thought she was by far the best looking of there's four of them. Wasn't there also a redhead? I don't know who it was, but because you had the two blondes, the redhead, and the brunette. And I thought by far the brunette was the best looking, and yet she was the one they kind of wrote as the kind of tag along that was just a rounding error in their cultural, I don't know, whatever it is they did in that show.
Kristen Davis.
Kristen Davis.
She played a character named Charlotte York.
I'm having to.
She has not aged well.
No, she.
Don't look her up. You're going to ruin all of your.
No, because I'm finding a bunch of pictures of her from back in that time period. And my remembrance of her was definitely not incorrect. I actually just found a picture of her off of Getty Images from that time period. And so, no, my recollection of how she looked is definitely correct. And like I said, I never understood why they wrote her the way that they did. But
well, and I don't understand why. I mean, Sarah Jessica Parker might be for some people, but I never found her attractive, even in the slightest.
Sarah Jessica Parker,
I don't like to call her the horse thing like everybody else does, but I don't find her attractive. I mean, she's there.
yeah, she never did much for me. And Kim Cattrall, I mean, she was all right once upon a time, but even by the time that show came around, I mean, it was such. Yeah, she was fairly old, and I think there was a fourth character who I don't remember much of anything about, and I guess that says all I need to know. She was completely immemorable.
I think the redhead was a lawyer or something.
Yeah, she was
something like corporate sort of.
Well, I can bring her up because she's in the list here. She's Cynthia Nixon played Miranda Hobbs. Now she's more attractive than she was in the show, but just like Kristen Davis, she really hasn't done anything since Sex and the City. That's the other sad thing is everybody's really popular for that one show and then they all kind of just die off.
Yeah, because they don't. I don't know if they don't have any. They just can't get paid on the typecasting. They don't have a good agent. I don't know. Maybe that's all they wanted to do. I know in some cases there have been people who have disappeared because that they did one show. They found they didn't like the scene. They didn't like the hours or whatever. And they did that one show and they were done. They wanted to focus on raising a family or some other career or whatever it is. There's a surprising number of musicians. I wish I could name one off the top of my head, which I can't. But I was surprised.
Opening a coffee shop in Portland?
There's a surprising number of musicians that were around in the 80s or the early 90s and then disappeared, and people think, oh, they were washed up, one-hit wonders, whatever. And within the music scene, maybe they were, except then to become producers or to start up side business ventures. There was a rapper from the 90s who went into IT or something like that and made a killing, excuse the pun. But it was not someone you would expect. It was just like something really, I can't think for the life of me now who it was, but it was not the sort of person you would expect to do that.
Have you ever heard of a band named Dokken?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Dokken, yeah.
Dokken did one album. All of the guys banked what they made, and they disappeared from the music scene entirely because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to make a bunch of money and leave. So the Dokken brothers, I believe, went into some sort of investment thing so that they can make their large amounts of money even larger. But yeah, that's the only as soon as you said them, like, oh, Dokken.
Well, I know Dokken has at least released some stuff. Because I'm actually looking at their discography, but did they change their lineup or?
That's almost a guarantee.
Well, is Dokken the one that did Dream Warriors from the Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack?
Let's find out. Dream Warriors.
Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong band because that's the band I'm thinking of. They did the soundtrack for Nightmare on Elm Street, and they were done.
Who did Dream Warriors in Street? Now you got me wondering because I'm the artist is listed as Angelo Badalamenti.
No, it's not right.
Yeah, there's got to be something else.
Yeah, I'm coming. I'm coming for you, buddy.
Because yeah, now I don't know. Yep, it was Dokken. It was Dokken, yeah. But if you look at the discography, they've got stuff as far forward as 2012.
Are they commercial jingles?
Are they commercial jingles? No, it's full albums.
No.
Oh my god. So, all right. So, Dokken discography. Because now I need to see this discography. Because
Well, there's a band that I'm thinking of who did Can I Play with Madness? That was Iron Maiden. Okay, never mind. I was also boring Dokken with Iron Maiden internally for some reason, which I'm sure somebody listening is going to be very upset I did. But
then Dokken must have come back because you notice from 1995 to 2012 there is nothing. That is a huge gap for a band. Oh well.
yeah,
Well. Oh yeah, yeah, because it's
They could have done solo things too, or joined different bands, or
actually, I'm seeing the big gap is 87 to 95. Yeah, it's back for the attack in 87, and then almost 10 years before Dysfunctional. Then they have one about every 2 to 3 years up to 2012. I've heard and I don't know this for sure. I've never met the guy, but I was listening to one of those like long time radio DJs was saying that apparently Don Dokken, so the namesake of the band, is apparently not a nice guy.
what? Somebody that's famous isn't nice?
Yeah, so apparently he and like Billy Mitchell are drinking buddies or something. I don't know. Maybe he was one holding on to Billy Mitchell's VHS tape for all that time.
Could be. Could be.
But he was saying he tried to interview him at some point in his career. And he was a really rough interview because he was apparently not a nice guy. Okay, so I'm going to have to ask you this, going back to like podcasting, gaming, that type of stuff. So you do a live streaming show, right?
I do. So to be clear, this is the only show I live stream. I actually have another podcast that I do that I just talk about random stuff. And I just started up a third one, a chess podcast, but that's just recently. Mm-hmm. I have done multiples of podcasts in the past, and I've even podcasted before podcasting was called podcasting.
Oh, okay. So the question I was going to ask you is, one of the benefits we have of being a pre-recorded show is we have had some interviews that have not gone very well for a variety of reasons. The guests were inflammatory. The guests maybe were very nice, but they just had nothing to say. There was no content. They had an absolutely intolerable amount of background noise, any number of things, right? For some reason, this show was it wasn't just bad, it was unreleasably bad. And we had to scrap those shows. And I was going to ask, have you run into something like that? You don't need to name names or point to an episode, but have you run into something like that? And what do you do? Because you don't have the option of just being like, yeah, right click delete. That never happened.
I'm pretty sure that he's going to complain about me the most, being the background noise.
Okay.
Because
go get your dryer balls. So last episode that we did, 139, because this is 140. She was fairly disinterested in most of the topics, so she was felting dryer balls while we were recording, which means that she had a ball of yarn and a felty thing,
needles.
So she's actually going to do it here.
Okay.
That noise.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Is persistent through the entire show.
Yeah, but that's on your end. I'm curious if you guys have ever had this on the interview end, or
you've only done 2 interviews.
No, well, okay.
Have you done more?
Or guest host, or whatever you want to call it. If you had somebody on the other side who's just.
I currently own emeraldspectre.com. I used to own limeflavored.com. So when I had the lime flavored podcast, that podcast was specifically me talking to somebody or a multiple of somebody's about, it was just a conversation like this, but it was all audio and it was just pre-recorded and I would edit stuff. So yes, I have run into shows where it was unusable because of one person. I had to interview them 3 times because the first time, I think that they had a TV on in the background the whole time, and it just completely ruined the audio was just all wonky on their end. The second time, I'm pretty sure they were eating, but they weren't admitting that they were eating, but you could hear crunching like multiples of times. And then the third time, it's like I swore I made them sit just to do it. But yes, I've lost interviews. I have also been the recipient of being interviewed and having my episode lost. I was on a show called My So-Called 8-Bit Life.
Okay.
I was interviewed twice. The first time, the host claims to have that the audio on his syncing, when he synced him, he apparently lost my side of the audio at some point, and he didn't know how to recover it. I just think he didn't like the interview, which if he didn't like the interview, he should have just said it. But the second time we did it, I was more interactive because that's what I felt, is that I wasn't as interactive with the first one, so he thought I was just being quiet. Because a lot of the times in interviews, I don't talk. I let who I have on or who is interviewing me talk most of the time, even though I love to talk. And she'll agree with me.
He loves the sound of his own voice. He's his biggest fan.
Well, you have to get into this. I mean, that's...
I feel like he got into this because of that.
So, I used to write a column about professional wrestling in the late 90s and into the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I turned that column into an audio show, and that's what I called it, the audio show of the column. And there was only like 6 episodes ever made, and they were really hard to record back then because I was trying to make music in front of them, and it was a nightmare, which is why I stopped it. But that was years before the First Word podcast ever came out, and I was like, that's what I was doing. So when everybody's like, well, we were podcasting just right at the cusp of it, and I'm like, and I don't have those shows anymore because those were like 14 computers ago.
Yeah. Well, of course, I guess the definition of at least the common definition of podcasting is not simply the audio file, but it's the audio file combined with RSS distribution. And so it's when those two things came together that podcasting was a thing. Websites that had audio copies of interviews or radio shows or whatever, I mean, they were uncommon, but it's not too hard to find some of those that predate the advent of podcasting, which is 2004, 2005. But it was when they figured out, hey, we could take RSS, a really simple syndication, we could just add some tags to it to embed a media file. And it was, that they really kind of considered the dawn of podcasting. It wasn't about the creation, it was about the consumption. But having said that, yeah, I see what you mean, though, that the basic idea of trying to take audio and put it on the internet, whether it had RSS included or not, that was still something that not much of anyone was doing. I mean, because it was very, very hard to distribute that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, to record it in the first place, you didn't have a lot of tool sets for it. And then to distribute it, especially prior to people having broadband and things like that. I mean, I can't imagine trying to download a podcast on a 28.8 or a 56K modem.
And that was around when DSL was just starting to become a thing. So yes, it was like, oh, I heard about your show and I wanted to download an episode, but it took too long.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, when we got started 11 and a half years ago, which was later than you got started, old by podcasting standards, but later than you got started, we still had that problem. We record at we do a 64-bit rate. Okay, so for anyone at home who's like, what does this even mean? It has to do with the amount of information, which basically changes the quality of the audio. And most podcasts out there will do something in the 128 to 256-bit rate, which drastically increases the file size. Yeah, but we managed to get away with a 64-bit rate. And one of the bits of early feedback we got was people were really appreciative of that because that works out to about half a meg a minute. So an hour show is going to be about 25 to 30 megs. And that was a whole lot easier for them to download than, let's say, if we'd done it at 128, which would have been 50 to 60 megs. Nowadays, I don't think that I don't think that matters. You know, people download video games that are many gigs in size. But at the time, I mean, that was still a concern. It wasn't dial-up modem concern, but it was still a concern.
I haven't run into this a lot, but when I was getting into listening to podcasts, the one thing that would kill it immediately for me is the podcast guy that had he had a specific content thing. So if he was talking about video games, he would talk about video games, and then he'd play music as if he was some sort of DJ. And I'm like, no, you're done. I'm never listening to you again. You're not a radio station, for God's sake. Why would you do that?
Okay, the one that this has always taken the cake for me, and it was a quick thing, but it just took the cake for me, was when I had somebody, because they were basing it so heavily off of radio, that a lot of podcasts, they had that news magazine format. They were in segments. The segments had very specific time limits. It was exactly 10 minutes, you know, within a couple of seconds. And then they would have stingers before they go to the next segment and whatever. And I always thought that was kind of ridiculous. But the one that just took the cake for me was when somebody interrupted his own show at the 30-minute mark to do us an ID. Like, he stopped the conversation, stopped everyone dead to do a station ID. He's like, okay, this is whatever, and you're listening to so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. And I was listening to this, and I'm like, that's a requirement of the FCC. You're not being broadcast. Is this a podcast meant for people with Alzheimer's, where you start the show and every 10, 15 minutes, you have to remind them what it is they were doing and what year it is? I mean, why did you just interrupt your show at the 30-minute mark to remind people what you are?
And that falls into the whole play music thing, because, okay, I'm listening to you for your video games, but if you start playing hardcore death metal and I'm into rap, you've just lost everyone that's not into hardcore death metal.
Well, that's not even getting into the legalities of it. That's still a thing, but it was really big in the early days. Everyone just thought, well, I want to run a podcast, so I'll just grab my favorite CD and just use my favorite track by some major label band without consent, and that's going to be our intro and outro music. And it's like, you can't do that. You cannot use their music like that. But that was a big thing. My Spectre show, which is my random topic show, I do use Nine Inch Nails intro and outro, but it's not like I've got the whole song. It's just like a chunk, just an intro and a little chunk to outro. And I don't claim anything, and I credit them. I don't pay him anything, but I would if he asked me to. If Reznor came by with his an open bag, it's like, start putting money in.
Hey, if Trent Reznor talked to me, period, that would be awesome.
Yeah, even if it was to threaten you with a lawsuit, it's like, you know what? When the no, not a private eye. What do they call the people that serve court documents?
God, I don't even know.
No, it's not PIs. They're whatever it is. Okay, if one of those guys came by, you just be like, no, I'm not going to accept any papers from you. Trent has to come by and serve me himself. Right. And if Trent comes by and serves me, then I will accept the documents.
I could be like Tony Stark. I don't like being handed things.
Yes, exactly. There actually is depending on your state and such, actually is a certain legal weight to that, to accepting a document, which is why
being a man, that makes it hard not to accept things from other people.
Well, you have a unique situation because the mailbox, which is required to be there, is not their property. It's federal property.
But I do have customers randomly coming in. Can I give this to you? Yeah, you can give it to me. I'll take it.
Well, I meant for the mail that you're distributing. The mail that you're distributing.
Yeah.
The receptacle for the mail is treated as federal property. In fact, if you look at most mailboxes, it says that on there. It says this is property of the U.S. federal government. So you buy it, you have to put it in your front lawn, but it doesn't belong to you.
Nope.
And yeah, it's a weird thing. And there's all kinds of conspiracy theories surrounding this. That
Funny
I don't know why.
About mailboxes.
Yeah, ours just got destroyed this morning at about 2 a.m. Our condo building, we have 9 units in our condo. So one of those bigger boxes out in front of our building with, you know, everyone in it. And yeah, someone was prying it open this morning to steal stuff out of it. And the girl who lives in the condo that's basically right in front of the mailbox heard them and ran out and tried to catch them, I guess. She called the cops and stuff, and so now our box is all trashed, and that's actually been a huge issue in Portland, in our area recently. Is they're getting just broken into left and right, up and down the streets.
That's very unusual. I mean, once in a rare while here, I'll hear somebody having a package stolen off their front porch.
That's like a business out here.
I mean, and it's a rare thing. I've talked to people it's happened to, but it's a rare thing. I don't think I have ever even talked to anyone who has said, yeah, we have a real problem with people going into our mailbox and taking our mail.
We have a real problem with people here going into our mailbox and taking our mail. Okay,
so now I have.
Right?
Why? I mean, why specifically Portland of all places for this to happen? It's such an unusual thing.
I think it's unfortunately because this city is way too lenient about housing and keeping people homeless on the streets, and yet giving them all sorts of benefits to stay here and continue to live on the streets.
We're a sanctuary city, but I think that Portland believes that also includes the homeless, because we have a terrible homeless problem.
Mm-hmm. They keep extending this housing crisis that we're in, according to the city, where it basically allows them to open shelters in locations that would otherwise not be appropriately zoned for such. And so in our particular neighborhood where we are, a former sheriff's office has been turned into a shelter a little over a year ago. Well, actually about a year and a half ago now that I think about it. And shortly after that happened, which is it's within a quarter mile of our condo, our storage units in our building got broken into. And we had a safe stolen with all of our identity in it. Bike theft is one of the biggest things here. Bike theft, car theft. But we had 2 bikes in that storage unit that weren't taken. And all they did was seek out this safe, which was hidden, and stole it. I mean, there was nothing in there that they could sell. So anyway, we immediately had a deadbolt put on our storage unit, because there's basically a buffet of 9 doors lined up in a row for somebody to break into, one after another. And I think only 2 of the 9 maybe had deadbolts before we put one on. We put one on immediately, like I said, after one break-in. Over the course of the next year, they were broken into another 7 or 8 times. And this has all been since these extra shelters have opened. There's a church at the end of our street that decided to let homeless people camp in their lot illegally. There was an empty lot on the other end of our street that was bought for development but was not being developed for the last 2.5 years. and it was a revolving door of people dumping things and living there, and it's
terrible.
It's a huge problem out here.
Yeah, I got nothing on that one.
And you know, and a lot of people have security cameras, and a lot of, like, going back to just packages being stolen. Most of the time people are completely caught on camera, and the reason we know that there are so many problems with packages being stolen is because on the news they're constantly showing footage of people walking up or driving up into somebody's driveway, grabbing their packages and taking off with them.
And my favorite part about these videos is this. They're like walking up.
They look into the camera
every time.
Which means either they're really, really, really stupid, or those laws aren't being enforced. And so, I mean, if they're not adapting to wear a ski mask or something, then
yeah, it depends on the person. I mean, we've had to, on our property here, we had to have not deadbolts, padlocks installed on our dumpster and our recycling bins to keep the 7 to 10 groups of people a week that would come onto our property and rummage through things and throw stuff around. And one of the bigger problems that I had with it is that it's at the back of our property.
Mm-hmm.
And so they walk past all of our cars and all of those storage units I had mentioned to get to the dumpster, where they want to explain to you that they're just looking for cans to recycle because, you know, they're worth 10 cents a piece here.
Okay.
20? 10? 10. And, you know, I'm not letting anything go. I am not going to have this, okay, well, if you're on my property illegally to do this, you're okay. But if you're on my property illegally to do this, that's where I draw the line. No, I draw the line at all of it. So.
Well, yeah, because it's, you don't know once that starts where that stops. There was a, something that it wasn't at my current house, but my prior house, we had, there's something, anyone who also listens to Fear of the Boot has probably heard this story. We had an incident we called the drug tree. And when we moved into that house, there was this grown together mass of what we thought was 2 evergreen trees. And actually, when I went to cut it down, found out it was more like 5. But it was so densely grown together, you couldn't tell. And one night I'm sitting there in my living room, and Carla's sitting there as well. And the guy that lives across the street from us, well, I'm kind of paranoid to begin with, but he comes up and I just see somebody shining a flashlight into the living room. And I'm like, okay, it's about to be go time. Turns out it's just the guy across the street. I don't know why he didn't start with ringing the doorbell, but he was using the flashlight to get our attention for some really bizarre reason. And he's like, hey, I just saw some guys just came by in a truck. Looked like 3 kids, upper teens, maybe lower 20s at oldest. And he said, they were rummaging through your trees right there, your bushes right there. And I asked them what they were after. And they said, oh, we were dorking around, and one of my jerk friends threw my cell phone in there, and, we're just looking to find it. And it's a plausible story. So my neighbor's like, okay, no problem. I've got a flashlight. Why don't I go get my flashlight, get my cell phone? We'll call yours. We'll find it. We'll get back for it. He's trying to be helpful, right? He's a really nice guy. And when he says this, they all dive into the truck that they came in and speed off. And he's like, what the heck? So he goes back. They come back a second time. And like start rummaging around again or something like that. And as soon as he talks to him, same thing. They hop in the car and speed off. And so he's like, want to see what's in there? So Carla goes out there with him. I didn't know what the heck was going on. So all I know is people are doing something very, very bizarre in my front yard. So I went and got heat. And yeah, this ain't Oregon. And
your hair dryer? What?
yeah. I got the movie Heat in case they were bored and wanted to watch a good cop flick or a good bank robbery flick, you know. So we go back out there and dig around in there. And I don't know why they had chosen, of all places, to use this as their drop, but they had put a bag of marijuana in our front trees. All right. Now, here's the thing. Do I really care that there are local teenagers gasp and faint smoking marijuana? No, I really don't. Do I care that it's going on in my neighborhood? No, I really don't. Do I even on the surface care that it's occurring, that they chose for whatever reason, I don't know why, to hide one of their bags of it? And I don't know if they were using this as a drop point. I don't know if they thought they saw a cop following them and just threw it in there. I don't know how it got there. But does the fact that they put it in something in my front lawn, even if taken in a vacuum, bother me? The answer is no. But I don't know what this leads to. Because is this an isolated event, or is this going to become a habitual thing? And if this becomes a habitual thing, what kind of individuals start showing up in my front yard? What if they start dropping off things that are worse than weed? What if they keep doing it and the cops, looking at where it's occurring, say it's occurring in this guy's front yard, there's no way he doesn't know about it. And because of the way the laws here work, I go off as accessory. And so it's like, no, I have to drop a 10-ton weight on this, not because I care about this, but because I don't know where it stops.
Right.
And so, we had to, when they did come back several more times, and each time they came back, I would walk in a beeline straight toward them. Did not have the firearm drawn, but I did have it on me. And they, upon just seeing me, would take off and run. And I didn't intend to do anything violent to them. I mean, that was self-defense because I didn't know what they would do. And there's 3 of them, 1 of me. But it was more, I just intended to talk to them and just say, look, I don't care. Just get your crap out of my tree and don't ever do this again. Right. But they freaked out every time they saw me, got back in the car, drove off. And so we ended up having to call the police. And it was not because I had anything against these kids or even cared about what they were doing. But it's like, I need a paper trail that I'm not involved in this. And so I see from the same standpoint that, you have someone who comes, and let's say they're being completely honest. They come and they rummage through your recycling, and all they're looking for is recyclable cans because they're worth 10 cents a piece. Mm-hmm. And so if they get, if you guys go through some beers or some sodas or whatever, there's enough there that they can start saving up some money and go get a meal. Fine. But if your lawn and if your property becomes a perusing ground, what happens when a fight breaks out between 2 or 3 people over the same find? What happens if in the process of tossing this stuff around, they toss a something that's personally identifying, like a medical document, out and leave it on the ground? And somebody else who has more nefarious purposes uses that for identity theft or uses it for any number of things. And so there does come a point where you say, it's not this that bothers me, but it's what it's opening the door to. Now, I don't know if in your case, if you can do something like say, you know what? Okay, you say you're after cans. Fine. We have a recycling can or recycling bin. From now on, we'll put all of our soda and beer cans in a bag that we will put next to it or on top of it. You take that one bag and go. But if you're rummaging, we got a problem because I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're after. I don't know where this is headed. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's, or you can say, hey, look, where is it you're staying? We'll come by there and if you meet me at the street side, I'll pass it out the window to you and you can go take it and turn it in.
Well,
but you guys need to stay off our property because we don't know what's going on.
It has to be the bottom line of stay off my property.
Yeah, because you're responsible. You will be held responsible for what occurs. Because
Portland is so lenient on these people that they have more rights at this point than a law-abiding homeowner.
Yeah, I mean, let's be in Missouri. That's definitely not the case here. We don't have as many homeless, partially because I live out in the suburbs, and it's very difficult to be homeless in the suburbs. It's a lot easier to be homeless in a high population density area.
Right.
And so there is more of it in the city than there is where I live out in the suburbs. But
we are almost in a suburb. We're 8 to 10 miles outside of the downtown area, where the hub of crap happens.
Yeah.
But the city keeps spreading it throughout the town by putting these orders out that we have a crisis and we need to open more shelters. And then they put them in our neighborhoods. And that's not something that we get any say in.
Yeah, and it's also, it's also in many ways really not dealing with the issue because of the fact that, I think you need to look at why these people are homeless. Are they homeless because they're mentally ill? If that's the case, then we need to be getting them the medical help they need. Are they homeless because of the fact that they lack job skills and hit on hard times? Well, then we need to start looking into long-term rehabilitation programs, to get them back into society as productive members. Are these people homeless because of the fact that they have chosen an indigent lifestyle? And there are people that do that, by the way. Some percentage of people are homeless because that is the lifestyle they prefer. And if that's the case, well, I think at that point you do have every moral right to say, go do it somewhere else. Because, I mean, I'm sure this is the case in Oregon because this is the case here as well. I'm responsible for what occurs on my property. And so if people come onto my property and they do something illegal, or they end up getting themselves injured, or one of my dogs sees somebody they doesn't recognize and bites them, then suddenly I'm on the receiving end of this. And so unfortunately, because of the way society's structured, I can try and do what I can to help these people in under auspices. For example, our church has a constant what we call a benevolence fund, which is, we have two of them actually. One of them is for needs within the church, one of them for needs outside of the church. So somebody walks up to the church and says, hey, I live in the subdivision across from you guys, and they're about to shut off my power. We'll cut them a check, right there on the spot. We'll just be like, okay, here's some money to pay that bill. We hope you'll come back and worship with us, but that's not a requirement. There's no religious obligation here. We're just going to help you. But there's a big difference between somebody doing that by walking in the front door of the church and talking to somebody who works for the church versus somebody rummaging through my property in the middle of the night when I don't even know what's occurring. And once again, I'm going to be held legally or civilly responsible for the things that occur there. And that's, I think, the part that more than anything bothers me is so, yeah, I understand why it concerns you.
So part of the show this year is keeping it to a 2-hour time limit. It's a weird place to end, I understand. So for you, just so you know, when we go off the air, we'll talk a little bit longer.
Okay.
So that you get a chance to plug for anyone that may find you through us. How do they contact you, Dan?
Okay, so how they find us is our primary thing that we do is a podcast on tabletop role-playing games or non-electronic gaming in general. We talk about advice, storytelling, character building. You can find that at feartheboot.com, and that's fear like be afraid of, the boot like what you put on your foot. So feartheboot.com. If you're interested in hearing actual play sessions, which is us playing the role-playing games, not just talking about them, you can just drop the W's off the front of that and just go to http AP is an actual play, .feartheboot.com. So no W's on that. Just ap.feartheboot.com.
Isn't that a subdomain?
It is a subdomain.
Now, that is a subdomain. The middle part's the domain. Here for the real grand prize, what is the .com called?
That's the damn it.
The super domain.
Super domain.
It's a super domain.
Somebody will mention something and we'll all go blank. We're like, oh man.
Yeah. AP is the subdomain, Fear the Boot's the domain, .com is the super domain.
Okay. Because I have a subdomain on my website for my food blog, and it also doesn't work with W's.
Yes.
Is that a subdomain thing?
There is a way to make it work with W's, but it's complicated and it would take a whole lot longer than the 30 seconds we're trying to sign out on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the people watching and or listening, because this will also go out in audio, you can catch us. I'm pretty sure we'll be on next week. Hopefully we'll have more hosts.
Yeah, next week is Retro Gaming Expo.
Yeah, and I'll put the audio out as soon as I can. But Dan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, DJ, thank you for having me. Trish, it was great meeting you.
And we have to have you on again because our co-host, the guy we call Metal Jesus, also listens to you, and he was very disappointed that you happened to be on the weekend that he couldn't be on.
Well, I got to talk to the DJ, so I guess that's Hip Hop Jesus. So I'd love to talk to Metal Jesus as well.
Yeah, and we'll have to do our DJ and MC DJ.
Yeah, MC DJ and DJ DJ.
All right. Well, for the viewers and the listeners, bye.
Bye.